My son stopped calling me for 2 whole weeks. I got worried and went to check on him without telling anyone. When I got to his apartment, I heard strange sounds coming from under my little grandson's bed. The police came and lifted it up. What they found made everyone stand still and gasp. Let me tell you why. Hello friends, I'm so happy you're watching this today. If you like my story, please click the like button, follow Granny's voice, and write in the comments which country you're watching from. I want to see how many places my story reaches. Now let me tell you what happened. That scary day started when I got on a big city bus going to Denver. The ride took 4 long hours. I sat quietly the whole time, looking out the dirty window. My stomach felt sick with worry. I kept telling myself everything would be okay, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. When the bus finally stopped at the station, the sun was going down and the sky looked orange and purple. I walked fast toward the apartment building where my son Robert lived with my sweet grandson Tommy. I had visited them so many times before, walking down these same streets. But today felt different. Today felt like walking into something bad. When I got to their apartment door, I knocked softly at first. Then I knocked harder and harder. "Robert, Tommy, are you home?" I called out, but my voice sounded weak and scared. Nobody answered me. The hallway was so quiet I could hear my own heart beating. I tried turning the door handle, not really thinking it would open. But it did. The door wasn't locked. My heart started beating so fast and loud. Robert always locked the door. He was very careful about keeping Tommy safe. I pushed the door open slowly, trying not to make noise. I felt like if I made too much sound, something terrible would happen. When I walked inside, I couldn't believe what I saw. The whole living room looked messy and broken. The couch was pushed way over to one side like someone had shoved it really hard during a fight. On the floor I saw a broken plate. The white pieces were everywhere, mixed with dried-up food that had turned brown. I stepped carefully around it, my legs feeling wobbly and weak. I didn't want to step on the sharp pieces. In the kitchen area, I saw the garbage can turned over on its side. Empty food boxes were scattered all over the floor. Some cabinet doors were hanging open. The whole place smelled musty and old, like nobody had opened a window in a long time. The quietness made my skin feel cold. I walked to the stairs, and each step felt heavy like my shoes were made of rocks. My heart was pounding so loud in my ears I thought it might explode. I opened the door to Robert's small office room. Nobody there. Then I checked his bedroom. The bed was made but looked like nobody had slept in it for days. Everything felt wrong and scary. Finally I got to Tommy's bedroom. "Tommy, sweetie, where are you?" I called out, but my voice came out quiet and rough. Nobody answered me. I stood in the middle of his room looking at all his toys. His building blocks were on the floor. His favorite stuffed dog was on the chair. My heart felt like it was breaking into pieces. Then suddenly I heard a tiny sound. It came from under Tommy's bed. It sounded like something plastic scraping across the wood floor. I froze completely still. My whole back felt ice cold. My heart started beating even faster, so fast I thought it would jump out of my chest. Something was hiding under that bed. I wanted to bend down and look under there, but my feet felt stuck to the floor like glue. I took one step backward, grabbing onto Tommy's desk with my shaky hand so I wouldn't fall down. "Tommy," I called again. But only silence came back to me, except for that little scraping sound. It was like a warning telling me something was wrong. Fear took over my whole body. I ran out of the apartment as fast as I could, my hands shaking so badly I couldn't press the phone buttons right. I had to try 3 times before I could call the police. "My son is missing," I shouted into the phone, my voice breaking and crying. "I haven't talked to him in 2 whole weeks. There's a scary noise under my grandson's bed," I said, stumbling over my words. I didn't even know what I was saying. I just knew I needed help fast. In less than 10 minutes, I saw red and blue flashing lights outside the window. I led 2 police officers to Tommy's bedroom. With a shaky finger I pointed at the bed. "Under there," I whispered, too scared to look myself. One of the officers, a young man with dark hair, kneeled down on the floor. "Is someone under there?" he asked in a strong, loud voice. The room got so quiet and heavy you could barely breathe. Nobody said anything for what felt like forever. Then, without saying another word, both officers grabbed the bed frame and lifted it up all at once. That's when I saw him. It was Tommy, my precious grandson, curled up in a tiny ball underneath. He looked so skinny, like he hadn't eaten in days. His hair was wet and messy with sweat. His clothes were dirty and smelled sour. He was holding an empty plastic bottle tight in his arms. His eyes were open wide, but they looked empty, like he was staring at something far away that I couldn't see. I stood there frozen, feeling like my heart stopped beating. The two police officers also looked shocked and couldn't speak for a moment. I fell down on my knees, wanting to hug Tommy, but my hands were shaking so much I was afraid to touch him. "Tommy, my sweet boy," I whispered as tears filled my eyes. He didn't answer me. He didn't even move. He just stayed there, holding that empty bottle like it was the only thing keeping him alive. I didn't understand what had happened yet, but I knew this nightmare was only starting. My name is Margaret. I'm 62 years old and I live by myself in a quiet town in the countryside. My story begins on a chilly morning in early November when I first knew Robert was gone. It was 2 terrible weeks where I lived with worry that had no answers. The first day, I called Robert to check on him like I always do. I was sitting at my kitchen table, holding my phone, listening to it ring and ring and ring until his voicemail answered. He didn't pick up. I sent him a text message. "Are you doing okay, sweetheart?" But the message showed it wasn't delivered. I started feeling a tight knot in my belly, like something was very wrong. But I told myself maybe he was just busy at work. Maybe his phone battery died. Maybe he went somewhere without phone service. Robert is a grown man who likes doing things his own way, so I tried not to worry too much. But over the next few days, that worry grew bigger and bigger, like a fire slowly burning inside me. I kept calling him at different times. Early in the morning, late at night, even in the afternoon when I knew he took his lunch break. But every time just silence. I left him voicemail messages, my voice shaking and worried. "Robert, where did you go? Please call me back. I'm so scared." But those messages disappeared into nothing with no sign he ever heard them. I started thinking the worst thoughts. Robert wasn't the type of person to just disappear without telling anyone. He always called me once every week to tell me about his work, about Tommy, about their normal everyday life together. This silence wasn't like him at all. By the 5th day, I couldn't take the waiting anymore. The worry was eating me up inside. I tried calling his home phone, hoping I would hear his voice or at least Tommy's voice. Tommy was my 7-year-old grandson who always loved to talk and talk. But the phone just rang and rang in that empty apartment until I finally hung up. I opened my computer and sent Tommy a message on the chat app kids use. "Sweetie, where are you? Please write back to Grandma." The message went through, but Tommy never read it. My heart felt heavy and sad. Tommy is young, but he knows how to use a computer and a phone. He loves his grandma so much. He always answered my messages right away. I started calling Robert's friends from work. They all sounded confused and surprised. Their voices seemed unsure when they talked to me. "I haven't seen Robert at the office this whole week," one man who worked with him told me. "I thought maybe he took time off for vacation." Another friend said the last time Robert and I talked was about a month ago. He told me he had lots of work to do. Nobody knew anything more than that. The more people I asked, the more I felt lost in darkness with no answers anywhere. Robert is not someone who disappears without notice. He's a good father who takes care of his son. He's a loving son to me. Something must have happened to him. On the 10th day, I couldn't sit around waiting anymore. I looked up phone numbers for people who lived near Robert's apartment building. I called everyone whose number I could find. They all sighed sadly on the other end of the phone. Their voices were full of pity for me. An old man who lived right next door told me that last week, late at night during the big thunderstorm, he heard loud banging noises coming from Robert's apartment. Sounded like furniture being moved around. I thought maybe he was just rearranging things, but it seemed strange, the neighbor said. But his voice was shaking like he also thought something was wrong. His words hurt my heart like a sharp knife stabbing me. The night of the thunderstorm. Loud banging sounds. Furniture moving. I was sure something very bad had happened. 2 whole weeks went by and all my trying got me nowhere. Not one message back, not one phone call, not one clue. I couldn't sleep at night anymore. I would just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, imagining all kinds of terrible things. Did Robert have a car accident? Did somebody hurt him? Did he go away somewhere on purpose? But no, Robert would never leave Tommy behind. Tommy was his whole world, his reason for living. And Tommy, my precious grandson, where was he? The more I thought about it, the harder it was to breathe. I couldn't just wait around for one more minute. I decided I had to go to Robert's apartment myself. And what I found there only made my fear grow even bigger. Now I'm sitting in the dim, quiet light of a hospital room. My hands are gripping the arms of the chair so tight my knuckles are white. If I let go, I feel like the whole world will fall apart. Tommy was lying in the hospital bed. His small body looked so tiny under the white sheets. A police officer had carried him in his arms all the way from that cold, scary apartment. I ran behind them like a ghost with no soul. My hands were trembling when I touched Tommy, wanting to hold him close, but scared I might hurt him if I squeezed too hard. Tommy didn't react at all. He didn't blink his eyes. He didn't take a deep breath. His little hands were holding that empty water bottle like it was the last thing connecting him to life. The police car drove fast through the dark city streets. The siren was so loud it hurt my ears, echoing through the night. I sat right next to Tommy, using a folded newspaper to fan his face gently while softly patting his back. "Tommy, Grandma is right here with you," I whispered with my voice all broken and sad. But the boy stayed like a statue, not moving at all. His eyes were wide open, staring at nothing and everything at the same time. I kept wondering what happened to my grandson and to Robert. That messy, broken apartment. That empty bottle. Those sounds under the bed. It all felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from, no matter how hard I tried. At the hospital, doctors and nurses rushed Tommy into a special emergency room right away. I stayed outside pressing my hands flat against the glass door, watching them move quickly around him. I could hear machines beeping and doctors talking fast. No cuts or bruises on his body. Very hungry and thirsty. His mind is hurt from something scary. Every word they said felt like a knife cutting into my heart. His mind is hurt. My 7-year-old grandson, that boy who used to smile bright like sunshine every single day, was now laying there so thin and weak like a dry leaf that could blow away in the wind. A little while later, the doctor let me come inside the room. Tommy was already hooked up to a tube in his arm giving him water and medicine. The thin tube was connected to his skinny little arm. His eyes were still open, but they weren't looking at me. They were looking at some faraway place I couldn't reach or understand. I took his cold little hand in mine and said his name. "Tommy, it's Grandma. Please wake up. Please say something to me." But the boy didn't answer. He didn't even blink his eyes once. I sat down on the bed next to him and tears started falling down my face. I remembered when Tommy was younger, when he would run around my backyard laughing so loud and asking me to tell him stories about when I was a little girl. Now that beautiful smile was gone. In its place was a scary silence, like my grandson had locked his soul away somewhere I couldn't find it. The police also came to the hospital with their notebooks and lots of questions to ask me. A young woman officer with a serious face sat down in the chair next to me. "Ma'am, can you tell us when you last spoke to Mr. Robert?" she asked. I shook my head as a big lump formed in my throat, making it hard to talk. "It's been 2 weeks," I said with my voice shaking and trembling. I called him over and over. I sent him messages. That night, I sat right beside the bed watching Tommy shake and tremble while he slept. He was holding that empty water bottle tight in his sleep, like he was scared someone would take it away from him. Sweat was running down his forehead, making his pillow all wet. Sometimes he would suddenly wake up, his eyes huge and full of terror. But he wouldn't say anything. He would just look at me with those empty, faraway eyes. I wiped his forehead gently with a small wet towel, my hand shaking the whole time. "Grandma is right here with you," I whispered, even though I knew he couldn't really hear me or understand. The doctor came in to check on him. She was a woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She put her hand on my shoulder and said softly, "Ma'am, the boy needs lots of time to heal. He went through something very shocking and scary. You have to be patient. You'll see. He'll tell us what happened when he's ready." I nodded my head, but inside I felt a terrible, terrible heaviness pressing down on me. Patience. How could I be patient when Robert was still missing? When Tommy was here looking like a shadow of who he used to be? I spent the whole entire night sitting right there, holding Tommy's hand, listening to his weak, quiet breathing. I remembered the last time I talked to Robert on the phone before all this happened. His voice had sounded tired and worn out, but he still tried to laugh and joke with me. "Mom, I'm doing fine. Work has just been really busy lately." I didn't realize how busy it really was. I didn't ask him more questions. Now I blamed myself so much. If I had paid closer attention, if I had called him sooner, would things be different now? 2 more days passed and I didn't move away from Tommy's hospital bedside for even 1 second. It felt like if I took my eyes off him for even a moment, he would disappear forever. Tommy was still there, small and fragile looking. His thin hands were hugging a soft teddy bear that a nice nurse had given him. I tried to feed him some warm soup, 1 small spoonful at a time, bringing it carefully to his mouth. I hoped he would eat something to get stronger. "Eat, Tommy sweetheart, so you can get your strength back and come home with Grandma," I whispered with my voice shaking. But the boy would only swallow 2 or 3 little spoonfuls. Then he would close his mouth tight and wouldn't eat anymore. His eyes just stared at the ceiling above him. Every single night was exactly the same. Tommy had terrible nightmares that scared him. Sometimes he would sit straight up in the bed suddenly, his mouth open wide like he was trying to scream. But no sound would come out of his mouth. I would hold him close, rock him back and forth gently, and sing him the lullaby I used to sing to Robert when he was a little baby. But Tommy would just shake and tremble. Sweat would cover his whole forehead and face. I would wipe his face with a cloth, but my hand shook so much the cloth would fall on the floor. I asked for a special doctor who helps with feelings and thoughts to come visit. A young woman came with a very sweet, gentle voice. She sat down next to Tommy, held his hand softly, and asked him nice, easy questions. "Tommy, do you want to tell me anything about your daddy or about things you saw?" she asked gently. But the boy just hugged his teddy bear even tighter. His eyes looked down at the floor and he didn't say one single word. I stood off to the side with my heart stuck in my throat, barely able to breathe. "Will he ever talk again, doctor?" I asked, almost begging for good news. The special doctor looked at me with kind, understanding eyes. "Ma'am, he needs more time to feel safe. The shock was way too big for such a young child to handle. But I truly believe he will open up and talk when he's ready. Just not the right time yet." I nodded, but inside my heart I couldn't stay calm. Time. How much time did I have left to wait while Robert was missing, and every single day felt like torture and pain. On the morning of the 3rd day, I was washing Tommy's face, gently wiping a wet cloth over his thin, pale cheeks. I tried to smile at him and started telling him an old funny story about Robert. I told him about when Robert was a young boy and he accidentally broke my favorite flower vase. He tried to glue it back together before I found out. "Your daddy was so silly, Tommy," I said softly and gently. "But he loved you more than anything else in the whole wide world." Tommy didn't say anything back to me, but I saw his little fingers squeeze the teddy bear tighter, like he was holding on to something important. I was about to keep telling the story when my phone in my purse started buzzing and vibrating. The screen showed it was the police station calling. My heart started pounding hard and fast. A bad, scary feeling washed over me like cold water. I answered the phone, my hand shaking so much I almost dropped it on the floor. The detective's voice on the other end sounded heavy and serious, very different from his usual calm way of talking. "Mrs. Margaret, I need you to prepare yourself for some bad news. We just used special chemicals to check Mr. Roberts' apartment again more carefully. We found a very large amount of blood in the bedroom. My ears went numb, like the whole world suddenly went completely silent. The washcloth in my hand fell down to the floor. I couldn't feel my own hands anymore. They felt like they belonged to someone else. Blood, I repeated, my voice breaking into pieces. The detective kept talking, and every single word was like a knife stabbing my heart over and over. It's very likely we're dealing with a murder case here. The whole apartment has been marked off with tape. We're waiting for test results. I could barely understand what he was saying to me. His words weren't making sense in my brain. Then Tommy pulled hard on my shirt sleeve. I turned around and saw his red, tear-filled eyes, like he had heard everything the detective said. And then, after so many days of complete silence, Tommy suddenly burst into tears. It was a heartbreaking cry that shattered the quiet calm of the hospital room. "Daddy is gone," he screamed. His voice was weak and small, but full of so much pain, like his entire world had just broken into a million pieces. I fell backward into the chair, hugging him with every bit of strength I had left. My tears were streaming down my cheeks like rivers. "No, Tommy. No, that's not true," I told him. "But I did." "Mrs. Margaret, please stay calm. Let us help take care of the boy," she said softly. But I shook my head hard, holding Tommy even closer to me. "No, I have to stay right here with him," I said, my voice choked up and crying. I couldn't leave him. I couldn't leave him alone during this terrible moment. Not after he had just said those horrible, scary words. The doctor checked Tommy over and gave him some medicine to help him feel calmer and less upset. He slowly stopped crying so hard. But his eyes stayed red and puffy, looking at me with a pain I couldn't take away or fix. I stroked his messy hair, whispering quietly, "Grandma is here, Tommy. I'm not going anywhere at all." But deep inside, I felt like I was falling into a deep, dark hole with no bottom. If Robert was really gone forever, I couldn't even dare to finish that thought in my head. I remembered the very last time I saw my son. He had come to visit me in my small town, bringing me fresh apple pie that I love so much. "Mom, please take good care of yourself, okay?" he said with his bright, beautiful smile lighting up his whole face. Now that smile felt like a memory from long, long ago, erased and destroyed by the detective's terrible words and Tommy's heartbreaking cries. An hour had passed since the detective called about finding blood in Robert's apartment. Now the police were at the hospital with a small recorder and a notebook to write things down. A young, tall police officer with red hair sat carefully by the bed and said in a soft but careful voice, "Tommy, can you please tell us and your grandma what happened to you?" I felt Tommy tremble and shake in my arms. His thin little shoulders got all tense and tight. He lowered his head down, clutching the teddy bear in his hands like he was holding on to keep from drowning. I gently stroked his hair and whispered, "It's okay, Tommy. Just tell us what you remember. Grandma is right here with you and won't leave." I tried to make my voice sound calm and steady, but inside I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff about to fall off. I was scared of what he was going to say, but at the same time, I needed to know the truth no matter how much it hurt to hear it. After a few long minutes of silence, Tommy nodded his head slightly. It was such a small movement it made my heart want to break into pieces. I held my breath, squeezing his shoulder gently, and listened to each of his weak, broken words. Each word felt like a shattered piece of his little soul. "That night, there was a really bad thunderstorm with lots of rain," Tommy began. His voice was trembling and shaking, barely louder than a whisper. "I was in my room playing with my toy cars, making them race on my rug. I had built a big racetrack and Daddy said it looked really cool. Then suddenly the doorbell rang over and over, really fast and loud." Tommy stopped talking for a moment, looking down at his bear and squeezing it tighter and tighter. "I got curious because nobody usually comes to visit us at night. I went to see what was happening. Daddy was standing at the door looking through the little peephole. His face looked really scared and worried. I had never ever seen him look like that before. A chill ran down my whole spine listening to this. Robert was always so calm and in control. He always knew how to stay strong to protect Tommy. What had scared him so badly?" Tommy kept going. his voice getting quieter and smaller. Daddy turned around fast and saw me standing there watching. He ran over to me really quick, got down on his knees and whispered in my ear, "Tommy, you need to hide in your closet right now. Don't come out until I come get you. Do you understand me?" I was really scared, but Daddy pushed me toward my bedroom in a big hurry. I got inside my closet and Daddy even piled some blankets and clothes in front to hide me better so nobody could see me. I pictured my little boy, only 7 years old, hiding in a dark closet all alone, not knowing what was happening outside. My heart ached so much I thought it would stop beating. Through a tiny crack between the closet doors, Tommy continued, I saw a woman come into my bedroom. She had a man with her. The man was really tall with muscles and tattoos on his arms. That man's face looked mean and angry. He didn't say anything nice. He was just standing there with his arms crossed, looking around my room. I froze completely hearing this. Linda, Robert's ex-wife, Tommy's birth mother. I never thought she would come back after she left them. Or rather, she couldn't come back after everything bad that had happened before. Tommy trembled and his voice broke into pieces. The woman looked all around my room, opening drawers and looking under stuff. She asked really loud, "Where is Tommy? Where's my son?" Got so scared. I thought she was going to find me hiding. But my daddy told her in a calm voice, trying not to sound scared. He went to stay with his grandma for a while during school break. I knew Daddy was lying to protect me, but I didn't dare move even a tiny bit or make any sound. I felt hot tears rolling down my face. The police officer kept writing fast in her notebook. Her face looked serious and sad. I saw her hand stop writing for just a moment when Tommy kept talking. Then the woman started yelling at Daddy really loud. She was screaming and asking Daddy for money. She said something about owing money to bad people. She said Daddy had to give her money or something bad would happen to all of us. But Daddy shook his head and said no. He told her she had caused enough trouble already. He said she had bothered him way too much and he wasn't going to give her anything. Hearing that broke my soul into tiny pieces. Robert had tried so hard to escape Linda's shadow and all her problems. He had tried to build a new, peaceful life for himself and Tommy. But she had come back, bringing even worse trouble with her. Tommy stopped talking for a moment, breathing heavy and fast, like the memory was dragging him back to that terrible night full of fear. I rubbed his back gently in circles and whispered, "Take it easy, sweetheart. Grandma's right here with you." The boy took a deep, shaky breath and kept going with his story. Daddy, the woman, and the tall, scary man started fighting really bad. The woman was screaming so loud. The man moved closer to Daddy and said mean things like threats. I saw Daddy laying there on the floor not moving at all. I wanted to run out and help him. I wanted to call his name. But I was too scared to move. I was so scared. I hugged him with every bit of strength left in my body. My tears were soaking his hair. The image of Robert falling and hitting his head kept replaying in my mind like a nightmare on repeat. The police officer in front of me stopped writing in her notebook. She looked at me with sad, understanding eyes. "This statement is very important, Mrs. Margaret," she said in a heavy, serious voice. "We are going to investigate this as a possible murder case. Your grandson has been incredibly brave to tell us this." I nodded, but inside I felt an emptiness that nothing in the world could ever fill. Tommy kept crying and crying. His sobs were like sharp knives stabbing my heart over and over. I looked at the officer and said with my voice all choked up, "Are you going to find her? Are you going to find Linda and that man?" She nodded her head firmly and seriously. "We will do everything in our power, Mrs. Margaret. Promise you that." When the police finally left the hospital room, I stayed there hugging Tommy close to me. I could feel the dark shadow of tragedy that had just fallen upon my whole family. That night, after the police walked out, I couldn't sleep even one tiny bit. Tommy's soft sobs echoed in the quiet room like stabs to my already broken heart. He moved his lips in his sleep, calling for his daddy in a voice so quiet and faint I had to lean in really close to hear him. Every time he did that, I would gently wipe his face with a warm, damp cloth, hoping to soothe even just a little bit of the pain he was carrying. But as I touched his cold, pale skin, old memories came rushing back into my mind, hurting me as if someone were pouring salt on a wound that had never healed properly. I remember Robert when he was young, in his 20s, his career just starting out. His eyes were so full of hope and faith in the future. I remember how proud he looked when he brought Linda home to meet me for the first time. His smile was shining like the summer sun. "Mom, this is Linda," he said, his voice full of so much pride and happiness. "She's going to be my wife someday." Linda back then seemed like a sweet girl, a bit shy and nervous, but always trying her best to do things right and make a good impression. She would turn bright red and blush when I taught her how to bake cookies in my kitchen. I remember thinking to myself, yes, this girl is good for my son. She's going to make Robert happy for many years. Our whole family loved her, not just because of her warm smile, but because of the way she looked at Robert with such love, like he was her entire world and universe. Then Tommy was born into our lives, and it was like a brand new light had been turned on in our family. I still remember so clearly the day I held him for the very first time. He was wrapped in a blue blanket, nestled safely in my arms. His round little eyes looked up at me with the sweetest grin. The neighbors would stop me on the street and joke, "Mrs. Margaret, you look 10 years younger since that baby arrived." I would laugh with pure joy. My heart was so full of happiness. Robert and Linda were still happy together back then. They would come visit me often, bringing Tommy along with them and sharing stories of their new life as parents. I thought it would always be like this forever. I thought our small family would always be full of laughter and love and joy. But then everything started falling apart piece by piece. I remember getting a phone call from Robert one day. His voice sounded flat and tired, completely worn out. "Mom, Linda got herself into some serious trouble with gambling." I froze when he said those words. I couldn't believe that sweet, good girl had fallen into something so dangerous and bad. The first time it happened, Daniel quietly sold the truck he loved so much. It was the truck he had saved up money for over many years. He sold it just to pay off his wife's gambling debts. I saw him sitting on my porch one afternoon, his eyes all red from crying, but he still tried to smile for me. "Mom, I'll be okay. I just want to help her get better." I took his hand in mine, wanting to say something to comfort him, but I stayed quiet. I understood that Robert loved Linda so much he was willing to do anything to save her from her problems. But the trouble didn't stop there at all. The second time, when scary men came knocking on my door late at night making threats because Linda couldn't pay her debts, I had to take out all my savings from the bank. It was money I had been saving for my old age, for emergencies and retirement. But I didn't think twice about it. I just wanted to protect my family and keep them safe. "Mom, I'm so sorry," Robert told me that night with his voice all choked up and broken. I never thought things would get this bad. I hugged him tight and told him not to worry, that family is for helping each other no matter what. But deep inside I started feeling really scared and worried. Linda was no longer the sweet, good girl she used to be when she first joined our family. Every day that went by, she changed more and more into someone I didn't recognize. Linda became angry all the time, yelling and breaking dishes over the smallest, tiniest things. I remember one time clearly when I went to visit them. I saw Tommy hiding in a corner of the kitchen, his eyes red and puffy because his mom had screamed at him just for accidentally knocking over a cup of juice on the table. Linda was standing there shouting at him mean words. "You're clumsy just like your useless father." I ran over fast and pulled Tommy away from her, trying to calm everyone down. But she just laughed in a bitter, cold way. "He's my son. I know how to raise him however I want." Those words felt like a stab right in my heart. Tommy didn't deserve to live with those angry outbursts and mean words. I looked at Robert and saw him completely worn down and exhausted. His eyes that used to shine with happiness now only showed tiredness and helplessness. Many nights Robert would call me on the phone, talking through his tears and frustration. "Mom, I can't take this anymore," he would tell me with his voice shaking and trembling. "Linda is not the woman I fell in love with and married. I'm scared she's going to hurt Tommy one day." Hearing him say that broke my soul into pieces, but all I could do was try to comfort him and give him hope. "Son, if you need anything at all, I'm here for you. I'll always help you no matter what." Finally, Robert made the very hard decision to divorce Linda and fight in court for custody of Tommy. The day the judge made the final ruling, I saw him let out a huge sigh, but I was completely wrong about everything. Only 6 months later, Linda came back into their lives, bringing with her a nightmare that was so much worse than before. The story Tommy told me about that stormy, terrible night, about how Robert fell and lay completely still on the floor, kept replaying over and over in my head like a broken record. Linda, the woman I once loved like she was my own daughter, who was the mother of my precious grandson, had become a complete stranger to me. She had become someone cruel and heartless. Sitting alone in the darkness of the hospital room late at night, I watched Tommy sleep restlessly. I heard him sob and cry out in his dreams. His lips were still moving, calling for his daddy who would never answer him again. I made a serious promise to myself right then and there. "Robert, I will get justice for you no matter what it takes. I will protect Tommy with my whole life, no matter what it costs me." The next morning, weak sunlight came through the hospital window, but it couldn't take away the cold chill I felt deep inside my bones. I sat right next to Tommy, watching him sleep more peacefully after the calming medicine. His small face looked calmer than before, but the mark of pain was still there on his features, impossible to completely erase or forget. My phone started vibrating on the table. It was another call from the police station. The detective spoke in a heavy but firm voice and told me, "Mrs. Margaret, we have some new information that's very important. Can you please come to the police station right now?" I nodded even though he couldn't see me through the phone. I whispered softly to Tommy, who was still sleeping, "Grandma will be back in just a little while. You be good and rest. The nurse will watch over you and keep you safe." I asked the young, kind nurse I had gotten to know over these past few days to please watch Tommy carefully. Then I hurried out of the hospital as fast as I could, my mind spinning with 1,000 worried thoughts. On my way to the police station, I sat on the city bus looking out the window. But I wasn't really seeing anything except the image of Robert falling in Tommy's story playing over and over in my head. I held my purse tight in my hands, trying so hard to hold back the tears that wanted to fall. When I finally walked into the meeting room at the police station, the lead detective, a serious-looking man in his 50s with gray hair, was already sitting there waiting for me. He had spread out a big map on the table with several red dots marked in different spots around Robert's apartment building. "We have an important new lead," he said, his voice sounding confident and sure. A neighbor's security camera recorded a suspicious van on the night of the thunderstorm. I held my breath tight. My heart was pounding so hard and loud. He played a video on the computer screen in front of us. The picture quality was grainy and blurry because it was nighttime and the camera wasn't very good. But I could still clearly see a dark-colored van parked right in front of Robert's apartment building. Under the dim yellow light from the street lamp, I could see the shape of something long and heavy covered with a plastic tarp in the back of the van. A few minutes later in the video, the van drove away quickly down the street. The detective continued talking, pointing to another video clip on the screen. "We can't see the license plate numbers clearly because they're too blurry and dark. But the model and type matches one that's used by a local gang that lends money illegally." I squeezed my fists so tight my fingernails dug hard into my palms, leaving little marks. Tommy's story came flooding back to me. Linda and the strange, scary man wrapping Robert in something, dragging him out of the apartment. That long, heavy thing in the back of the van. I didn't dare let myself think about it further, but the pain felt like a sharp knife cutting through my heart over and over. A young male officer standing beside the detective added more information. "We've already checked all the video recordings from traffic cameras nearby on surrounding streets. The van shows up at a couple different points, but then we completely lose track of it on the edge of the city. We're already working with patrol officers to search for it in that area." I nodded my head slowly, but I felt dizzy and light-headed like the room was spinning around me. "Are you absolutely sure that van has something to do with what happened?" I asked, my voice shaking and trembling badly. The detective looked straight at me. his eyes full of determination and seriousness. "It's circumstantial evidence, which means it's not proof by itself, but it's very, very important, Mrs. Margaret. We're not going to let any clue or lead slip away from us." I felt a tiny glimmer of hope light up inside me, but at the exact same time, the fear of what they might eventually find made it hard for me to breathe properly. After the meeting was over, the detective suggested that I should go back with them to Robert's apartment one more time. I didn't want to go. I hesitated and felt scared. I didn't want to face that terrible place again. But deep down I knew I couldn't run away from the truth. When we finally arrived at the apartment building, the bright yellow police tape was still blocking the door like a warning sign. It was a constant reminder of the nightmare that had happened inside. The forensics team, wearing white protective suits, was still working inside the apartment. They were carefully collecting tiny samples, taking lots of photographs of every part of the scene. I stood outside on the porch, frozen in place. My eyes were stuck on the dried, dark stain on the bedroom carpet where just a few days before, I had walked in and found everything destroyed and broken. That stain, along with the mess and chaos, was like a permanent scar that would never, ever heal in my mind. Suddenly, an elderly neighbor lady, Mrs. Chen, came walking over slowly. She was leaning on her wooden walking stick. She whispered to me very quietly, as if she were afraid someone dangerous might hear her words. "Margaret, on the night of that big rainstorm, I heard a very loud, violent fight happening at Robert's apartment. There was yelling and shouting. I heard the sound of furniture being moved around and crashing. I wanted to call the police right then, but I was too scared to get involved. Scared of getting into trouble myself." The woman looked down at the ground, her eyes full of guilt and shame. I took her wrinkled hand gently in mine and said with my voice all choked up, "Thank you so much for telling me now. Can you please tell the police everything you heard?" Mrs. Chen nodded her head up and down. I carefully walked her over to the young officer who had been helping me. He wrote down everything she said in his notebook, asked her some questions, thanked her kindly, and promised to investigate it all further and more carefully. I watched Mrs. Chen slowly walk away down the street, leaning on her stick. My heart felt so heavy like it was made of solid stone. I blamed myself terribly, wondering and thinking if only I had arrived sooner, if only I had checked on them earlier, would things have turned out different? Would Robert still be alive? Before we left the apartment building, the detective gave me a gentle, kind pat on my shoulder and said in a quiet, low voice, "We're going to find that van, Mrs. Margaret. Please have faith and don't give up hope." I nodded, trying to believe his words. But deep inside, I didn't know if I had any strength left for hoping anymore. I walked away from Robert's apartment building. The sun was shining down brightly and warmly, but my heart felt cloudy and dark, as if it were about to rain a terrible storm. A few days after hearing Tommy's terrible, heartbreaking story in the hospital, I got another phone call from the police station. The detective's voice sounded as serious and grave as always, but with a hint of urgency and rush in it. "Mrs. Margaret, we finally found the address of the motel where Linda has been staying. Would you like to come with us when we go there?" I looked over at Tommy, who was sitting quietly on his hospital bed. He was hugging his soft teddy bear close and staring out the window with a lost, faraway look in his eyes. I didn't want to leave him alone even for a minute, but I knew deep down I had to go with them. If there was any clue at all about Linda, about what really happened to Robert, I had to see it with my own two eyes. "I'm coming right now," I replied, my voice shaking and unsteady. I once again asked the young, kind nurse to please watch over Matthew carefully and not leave him alone. I gently stroked his soft hair and whispered close to his ear, "Grandma won't be gone long, Tommy. Be a good boy. I'll be right back soon, I promise." The boy nodded his head weakly and slowly, but his gaze stayed empty and blank, like he was stuck in a place far away that I couldn't reach no matter how hard I tried. The motel where Linda had been hiding was in a rundown, forgotten part of the city. The walls of the building were covered with peeling paint. Everything smelled damp and moldy, mixed with exhaust fumes from cars. I walked alongside two police officers. My steps felt heavy on the cracked, dirty pavement. My heart was pounding fast, not from being tired, but from the fear of what I was about to discover and find out. When we finally arrived at the motel, the manager, a grumpy middle-aged man with messy hair, was sitting behind the front desk smoking a cigarette and watching a small television. As soon as he saw the police uniforms, he let out an annoyed sigh, like he was very used to police coming around asking questions. "That Linda woman," he said with a dismissive, careless voice. "She checked out about 2 weeks ago, paid her bill, handed in her room key, and took off in a big hurry." His words hit me like a punch straight to my chest, knocking the wind out of me. 2 weeks ago. That was exactly when Robert disappeared. Exactly when his apartment became a horrible scene of chaos and violence. I stood there frozen like a statue, holding my sweater tight around me to try to stay calm and not fall apart completely. The young police officer, the tall one with the red hair, asked the manager more questions. When she checked out and left, was she carrying a lot of luggage and belongings? The manager nodded, crushing out his cigarette in a dirty glass ashtray on the desk. Yeah, she had 2 huge suitcases with her. She looked like she was in a real panic and rush, like she was running away from something bad or someone dangerous. She even paid some random guy extra money to drive her away in the middle of the night. Didn't say goodbye to anybody or where she was going. Just as we were about to leave the motel and head back, a rough-looking man suddenly appeared at the end of the alley next to the building. He had a scary appearance with a worn, dirty leather jacket and a face covered with old scars. He walked toward us quickly and asked the manager in a harsh, rough voice, "Is Linda still staying here? I really need to see her urgently. It's important." The detective stopped the man immediately with a look as cold and hard as ice in his eyes. "Who are you? What's your business with Linda?" he demanded. The man stuttered and stammered, clearly surprised to see police there. He tried to back away and leave, but the young officer quickly grabbed his arm and held him in place. After a tense moment of nervous silence, the man sighed heavily, his voice annoyed and frustrated. "Marco, I'm her loan shark. I lend money illegally. Linda owes me a huge amount of money, thousands and thousands of dollars. She swore on her life she'd pay me back within 2 weeks. She promised me she'd have the money. But now she's completely vanished and nowhere to be found." The police officers and I all looked at each other with wide eyes. Nobody said a single word out loud, but I knew we were all thinking exactly the same terrible thing. The exact moment Linda ran away and disappeared, the exact moment Robert went missing, and now this promise of having a large sum of money very soon. It all fit together perfectly in the most terrifying, horrible way possible. The young officer spoke slowly, almost like he was asking himself the question out loud. Why would she be so confident and sure she'd have a large amount of money in just 2 weeks if she was so completely desperate and broke before that? If she was so desperate she had to track down and find her ex-husband? That question was like a cold knife stabbing directly into my heart. A bad, evil feeling grew bigger and bigger inside me. It felt cold and cruel, making my whole body tremble and shake. There was something much darker and more sinister behind all of this. I was terrified and afraid that the real truth would be even more painful and horrible than anything I had already imagined in my worst nightmares. That night, I sat right beside Tommy's hospital bed in the dim light. The faint glow from the hallway outside illuminated his sleeping face. He was still hugging his teddy bear so tight, like it was the only thing anchoring him to this world and keeping him from floating away. I took his small hand in mine, feeling the faint, weak warmth of his thin fingers. I tried my very best to calm myself down and breathe normally. But then, like a sudden flash of bright lightning in complete darkness, a vague, fuzzy memory came up in my mind. It made my heart start racing fast and hard. Many years ago, when Robert and Linda were still happily married and in love, Robert had proudly showed me an important life insurance policy document he had just bought. "Mom, I want to make sure my family is protected and safe," he told me with his bright radiance. "If anything ever happens to me, if I die, Linda and Tommy will have nothing to worry about. They'll be taken care of financially." The sole beneficiary listed on that policy at that time was Linda's name. And now, sitting here thinking about it carefully, I realized with horror that Robert had never once mentioned changing the beneficiary's name after they got divorced. That memory was like a sharp stab directly to my heart. Could Linda, with her massive, crushing debt and complete desperation, have set her sights on Robert specifically for that insurance money? I started to tremble and shake all over, not from being cold, but from a horrible, terrible feeling that was suffocating me and making it hard to breathe. I looked down at Tommy sleeping. I saw him sob quietly in his sleep. His lips were moving to call softly for his daddy who would never come back. I couldn't sit still for even one more second. The very next morning, as soon as the sun came up, I immediately called the detective. My voice was trembling badly as I spoke. I just remembered something really important. Robert had a life insurance policy. Big one. Linda was listed as the sole beneficiary on it. Can you please investigate that right away? He was silent and quiet for a long moment on the other end of the phone. Then he finally replied in a serious tone. "Thank you so much, Mrs. Margaret. That could be a key lead, maybe the most important one. We'll go to Mr. Roberts' apartment right away to search for it." I trusted Tommy to the care of the nurse, asking her multiple times to please not leave him alone for even a second. Then I went quickly with the police back to Robert's apartment once again. As we walked through the door, the yellow tape was still stretched across it like a scar. It was a constant reminder of the nightmare that had taken place inside these walls. The forensics team had already finished their work and left, leaving the apartment feeling cold, empty, and silent like a tomb. The detective led me and a young officer straight to Robert's small home office, the place where he used to organize all his important papers and documents. They searched through the metal file cabinet carefully, checking every single folder one by one, while I just stood there clutching my sweater tight around me. I had a terrible knot in my stomach that wouldn't go away. After more than an hour of searching through papers, the young officer suddenly shouted out loud, "I found it. Here it is." He was holding a blue folder in his hands. He opened it carefully, reviewed and read through it quickly, then passed it over to the detective. The detective glanced over the papers inside, reading carefully. Then he lightly tapped the folder against the edge of the wooden desk and said with contained, controlled anger in his voice, "Here it is. This is the motive. This is why it happened." I stepped closer and looked at the paper he was holding. I saw Linda's full name printed there clearly and officially in the beneficiary section. My terrible feeling had been right all along. Robert, out of love and a sense of responsibility from when they were married, had unknowingly and accidentally left the path wide open and clear for Linda to take cruel advantage of him. I sank down heavily into a chair, feeling like all my strength had left my body. Tears started streaming down my cheeks like rivers. "Why didn't you change it, Robert?" I whispered, my voice completely choked up and crying. "Why did you give her the chance to do this terrible thing?" The detective placed his hand gently but firmly on my shoulder and said in a very grave, serious voice, "Mrs. Margaret, if Robert died in what looked like an accident, Linda would automatically receive all the insurance money. Every single penny. With that large amount, she could easily pay off all her crushing debts and live very comfortably for years. This is most likely the exact reason he disappeared. This is why he's gone." His words felt like a heavy hammer hitting me hard on the head, making everything spin. I clenched both my fists tight, squeezing until my knuckles turned white. An immense, burning rage grew in my chest, getting bigger and hotter. Linda had become a complete monster, a person willing to take Robert's precious life away just for money, just for greed. I remembered her face from when she was young and newly married, when she smiled so happily standing next to Robert at their wedding. I wondered what had made her change so drastically and completely. Was it ambition? Was it desperation? Or was she simply a person who had lost herself entirely? That same afternoon, when I returned to the hospital feeling emotionally drained, my phone rang again almost immediately. It was the detective calling once more. His voice sounded even more urgent and rushed than before. "Mrs. Margaret, we've just received important news from our investigation team. They found an abandoned storage facility on the far outskirts of the city. It's a place the illegal loan shark gang uses for their criminal activities. We've already sent a special tactical team there to investigate it thoroughly." I felt my heart start pounding like a war drum, beating loud and fast in my chest. "What do you suspect you'll find there?" I asked, my voice trembling with fear. He hesitated for just a moment before answering. "We're not completely sure yet, but it's very possible that we might find some clue or evidence about Mr. Robert there." I sat down beside Tommy's hospital bed, feeling weak and dizzy. My hands were shaking so badly and uncontrollably I couldn't even hold a glass of water steady. That night, when Tommy was finally sleeping deeply, my phone rang one more time. I answered it, my hand shaking so much I almost dropped the phone on the hard floor. The police officer's voice on the other end was slow and halting, like he was very carefully choosing each word before he spoke it. "Mrs. Margaret, we found a body. A man's body hidden in the back of the storage facility. We strongly suspect it's Mr. Robert. But we need you to come and officially identify him." Collapsed completely. My legs gave out. A huge lump formed in my throat and I couldn't say even one. Now that beautiful smile was just a fading memory, and I was about to face a truth I absolutely did not want to believe was real. When the car finally stopped in front of the morgue building, I got out slowly, feeling like I was walking through a terrible dream. The young police officer, the one who had been helping me and staying with me these past few difficult days, put his hand gently on my shoulder and asked softly, "Mrs. Margaret, are you ready to do this?" I nodded my head slowly, even though inside I knew I would never, ever be ready for this moment. The heavy door to the cold storage room opened with a creak. A freezing cold air hit my face immediately. It smelled strongly of chemicals and death, making me shiver all over. The medical examiner, wearing a white coat, slowly pulled back the white sheet covering the body on the metal table. And then I saw Robert's face clearly. Even though it was pale and white, even though it was changed by time and by death, I recognized my son instantly and immediately. His thick dark eyebrows, his straight nose, the lips I had kissed so many thousands of times when he was just a tiny baby in my arms. He was still my Robert. "My boy." I burst into uncontrollable tears, falling down hard on my knees on the cold floor. I could only say two words over and over. "My son. My son." I desperately wanted to reach out and touch him, to hug him one last final time. But my hands were shaking so violently and badly I couldn't even lift them up. The young police officer quickly helped me up off the floor, his voice full of genuine sorrow and sympathy. "We are so sorry, Mrs. Margaret. Please come sit down over here." But I didn't want to sit down. I didn't want to do anything except scream at the whole world and ask why. Why did my son have to die like this? Why did this happen to him? When I finally calmed down just a little bit, the medical examiner, a serious-looking man in his 50s, came over to me. He was holding a folder with papers inside. He explained in a professional but gentle voice, "The victim died from a severe traumatic brain injury. It was caused by a strong, forceful blow against a hard object. Based on our examination, the time of death is estimated to be during the night of the thunderstorm, approximately 2 weeks ago." His words confirmed exactly what Tommy had told us about that terrible, horrific night. The night when Robert fell and lay completely motionless on the bedroom floor. I nodded slowly, but every single word the examiner said was like another knife sinking deeper and deeper into my already broken heart. "Thank you," I whispered quietly, not really sure why I was even saying thank you. Maybe for finally knowing the truth, as cruel and painful as that truth was. The police didn't stop their investigation at all. They kept working hard, expanding their search, examining that suspicious van the security camera had recorded. The detective called me around noon that same day. His voice was full of determination and resolve. "Mrs. Margaret, we found important evidence in the van." We found a blanket that had red stains on it. We also found a woman's jacket left behind in the back. The DNA test results confirm without any doubt that the stains are Mr. Roberts' blood. And the jacket belongs to Linda. We have proof now. I collapsed backward into a hard plastic chair in the hospital hallway. I put my hands over my chest, trying to breathe. All the loose, The detective called me right away. His voice was soft but firm and confident. Mrs. Margaret, we have her in custody. She's under arrest. Do you want to come to the police station and see her? I hesitated for a long moment, looking over at Tommy. He was sitting cross-legged on his hospital bed, coloring quietly with crayons. He was still hugging his soft teddy bear close to his side. No, I replied, my voice choked up and thick. I don't want to see her face. Just please make absolutely sure she doesn't escape. Make sure she pays for what she did. But in the end, even though I said no, as the police officers were leading Linda in handcuffs down the long hallway of the police station, I watched from far away. I stayed at a distance, hidden, but I could see her clearly. She was handcuffed with her hands behind her back. Her face looked thin and gaunt. Her hair was messy and tangled, uncombed for days. I felt a confusing mix of burning anger and, deep down in a strange way, a tiny bit of pity. Linda, who had once been my daughter-in-law, who was Tommy's birth mother, had completely destroyed her own life. And she had destroyed the lives of all the people who had once loved her the most. The trial took place in the big downtown courthouse. It attracted lots of attention from newspaper reporters and the public. The courtroom was packed full of people. I sat in the very front row, holding Tommy's small hand tightly in mine. I could feel his little hand trembling and shaking. He didn't want to come to the trial at all. He was terrified. But I had gently convinced him it was important. Tommy, we have to do this for your daddy. We have to see justice done. Grandma will be right here beside you the whole time. I won't leave you for even 1 second. He had nodded slowly, but his eyes were still completely full of fear and worry. The courtroom felt heavy and tense. The air felt thick and hard to breathe, like a rope pulled tight about to snap. The prosecutor, a tall, confident man with a sharp, clear voice, stood up in front of everyone. He began presenting all the evidence against Linda one piece at a time, methodically and carefully. He played the audio recording of Tommy's statement that he had given at the hospital. My grandson's small, trembling voice filled the entire silent courtroom as he recounted the night of the terrible storm. Hearing his words again squeezed my heart so tight I could barely breathe. I hugged Tommy even closer to me as he lowered his head down, hiding his face completely in his teddy bear's soft fur. The prosecutor continued without stopping, showing photographs of the blood-stained blanket and Linda's jacket that were found in the van. The DNA test results confirm without any doubt that the blood belongs to the victim, Mr. Robert, he said firmly, his voice echoing clearly through the courtroom. He then displayed the security camera images on a large screen for everyone to see. The blurry van under the street light at night, carrying something long and heavy covered with a dark tarp in the back. Finally, with great dramatic effect, he held up the blue folder containing the life insurance policy. He pointed directly at Linda's name printed as the beneficiary. This was her motive, he declared loudly and clearly, his voice ringing out strong. The defendant carefully planned and executed a murder to collect the insurance money. She wanted to pay off her massive gambling debts and live comfortably. This was premeditated murder for financial gain. I looked across the courtroom at Linda sitting in the defendant's chair. Her head was bowed down low. At first, she tried to stay calm and composed, avoiding everyone's staring eyes. But as each piece of damning evidence was presented one after another, she began to tremble visibly. Her hands shook. Suddenly, without warning, she jumped up from her seat and shouted out loud, her voice cracking and desperate, "I didn't mean to kill him. It was an accident. I just wanted money to pay my debts. That's all I wanted." Her voice broke completely, but not one single person in that packed courtroom was moved by her words or felt sympathy. The prosecutor approached her calmly and refuted her coldly with facts. If you only wanted money and it was truly an accident, then why did you hide the body? Why did you try to stage it to look like he disappeared? Why did you attempt to collect on a life insurance policy by making it seem like an accidental death? Answer those questions. Linda stood there speechless and frozen. Her lips moved and trembled, but no sound came out at all. She turned desperately toward her accomplice, the rough, scary man who had been with her that terrible night. She pointed at him with a shaking finger and screamed loudly. It was him. He's the one who pushed Robert so hard. It's his fault Robert fell and hit his head. The man immediately jumped up from his seat, his whole face turning bright red with fury and rage. He pointed right back at her and shouted even louder, "You're a liar. You were the one who planned absolutely everything from the beginning. You told me exactly what to do. You told me to push him. You're the one who made me help you hide the body. You promised me money." The atmosphere in the courtroom became incredibly tense and explosive. The murmurs and whispers of the crowd grew louder and louder, sounding like a wave crashing. I hugged Tommy even tighter, feeling his whole small body trembling against mine. "Grandma," he whispered to me, his voice so tiny and scared, "was it all my fault? Should I have come out and tried to stop them?" I immediately stroked his hair gently and firmly, trying my absolute hardest not to cry in front of him. "It was absolutely not your fault, Tommy. Not even a little bit. Your mom made a terrible, evil choice. She's going to have to pay for what she did. Your daddy loved you more than anything in the universe." But deep inside my heart, I knew those words couldn't heal the deep wound in Tommy's innocent soul. After many long hours of deliberation in a private room, the judge, a serious woman with steel-gray hair and a penetrating gaze, finally stood up to deliver the final verdict. Her voice was crystal clear and firm, cutting through the heavy silence. The defendant, Linda Morrison, is found guilty of first-degree murder with premeditation and guilty of insurance fraud. She is hereby sentenced to life in prison without any possibility of parole. The accomplice, Marco Daniels, is found guilty of being an accessory to murder and guilty of concealment of a body. He is sentenced to 25 years in prison. When the sentence was read out loud and officially, I completely broke down crying, hugging Tommy with absolutely every bit of strength left in my body. My tears were not only for the unbearable pain of losing Robert forever, but also for the relief that justice had finally been served after all this suffering. Matthew hid his face deep in my chest, crying uncontrollably, his whole body shaking with sobs. And all I could do was rub his back in gentle circles, whispering over and over, "It's over now, my sweet boy. It's finally over. Your daddy can rest in peace now. He doesn't have to worry anymore." A few weeks after the trial ended, I made the extremely difficult decision to close up Robert's apartment for good. I couldn't ever go back to that place again. It was once filled with the beautiful laughter of my son and grandson. Now it was just a painful, haunting memory that hurt too much to face. I carefully packed up all of Tommy's toys, his clothes, his books, and brought everything back to my house. I took Tommy to come live with me permanently in my small, quiet town in the countryside. I enrolled him in therapy sessions with a kind child psychologist, hoping desperately that the deep wounds in his heart would slowly, eventually heal with time and care. Every single night, I sit by his bedside, and I tell him stories about Robert from when he was a young boy growing up. I tell him about how Robert always wanted to make me proud, how he worked so hard at everything he did, how much he loved being a father. "Your daddy loved you more than life itself, Tommy," I say gently, stroking his soft hair as he drifts off to sleep. "And Grandma loves you too, more than anything in this whole world." That night, I sat quietly by the window with Tommy finally asleep peacefully in my arms. The bright moonlight streamed in through the glass, soft and gentle like a comfort from heaven. I looked up at the dark sky full of twinkling stars and whispered quietly, "My son, my dear Robert, I promise you with all my heart I will raise Tommy and protect him for you. I will love him enough for both of us. Justice has been served. Linda will pay for what she did for the rest of her life." Hot tears rolled slowly down my cheeks, But for the first time in weeks, I felt a very small bit of peace settling in my heart. It was as if Robert were somewhere up there among those stars, smiling down at me and Tommy, finally at rest. I hugged Tommy closer to me, knowing deep in my soul that although the terrible pain of losing my son will never, ever completely go away, I still have him. I still have my precious grandson. And I will spend every single day of the rest of my life taking care of him, protecting him, and loving him just exactly as Robert would have done. After everything we've been through together, from the very bottom of my heart, I want to say to you who have followed my story all the way to this moment, that the love and care we have for family should never, ever be taken for granted. Not for one single second. A single oversight, one moment of not paying attention, can lead to a tragedy with absolutely no turning back. Ambition and betrayal can turn your loved ones into complete strangers you don't even recognize anymore. But justice will always, always speak and be heard if you are persistent and don't give up until the very end. I learned through all this pain that true strength comes when you rise up to protect those you love, even when you're in the middle of the deepest, darkest pain imaginable. And above all else, loss taught me to truly value every single second we have together with the people we love. Because the love of family is the most valuable, precious legacy we can possibly leave to the next generations who come after us. The story you have just heard has had names and places changed to protect the identities of everyone involved. We don't tell it to judge anyone, but in the sincere hope that someone listening will hear it and stop to think about how many grandmothers and mothers are suffering in silence within their own homes, within their own families. I truly wonder, if you were in my exact place, what would you do? Would you choose silence to keep the peace and not make waves? Or would you dare to face it all, to confront the truth no matter how painful, to reclaim your own voice and get justice? I would really like to know your honest opinion, because every story like mine can become a light that illuminates the path and gives hope to others who are suffering. God bless you all, every single one of you watching, and I am absolutely sure that courage will lead all of us to better, brighter days ahead. For now, on the end screen, I will leave you with two of Her Voice Unfolds channel's most popular and favorite stories. I promise you they will surprise you and touch your heart. Thank you so much for being here with me until this very moment. Until next time.